Sincere greetings, my free comrades. In this message, I will discuss our opinion as a free people about what is currently happening in Palestine, as it is living these days under the weight of brutal strikes led by the criminal Zionist forces, which planned and is implementing a plan to expel the honors of the land in Gaza from it. So it choose what the Zionists call revenge justifies occupation, as they did, as they always choose occupation when there are excuses, and this is what incites. It have its supports around the world for showing its usual brutality in attacking civilians. In Gaza and elsewhere in the occupied Palestine, there is no difference between military and civilians, women, children, and the elderly, and it does not matter what violation of a human value this crime represents. What the Zionist state only cares about is occupying more lands, uprooting the original from its place by force, destroying history and changing the geography according to its calculations and interests. When Zionist tanks and planes advance, they do not care at all about international law, the United Nations, the Security Council, or international norms and treaties. How not? Zionist state is the spoiled child whom the American dominance power used its veto dozens of times to protect, despite the killing, displacement, and massacres it committed against the Palestinian people, who were disowned by brothers and the enemy. Israel does not believe that the written laws left on the shelves of international courts belong to it, but rather to weak and poor countries or enslaved nations that oppose the policies of the dominating master. What it only means is to continue to buy time and benefit from this dominant and equal world order that has for decades granted the Zionist state the right to practice injustice and rob the land. We cannot read the events taking place now in Gaza elsewhere through Israelis' frantic speed in using violence and the tension in the atmosphere without looking at the internal political crisis that the Zionist entity is experiencing, especially Netanyahu, who is seeking to shuffle the cards, especially after his inability to form a government following the recent election. There is nothing better on Netanyahu's agenda than violating the right of the Palestinian people and inventing a new Cold War in order to win over the Israeli vote until he find him ready for governmental change. The truth is that Netanyahu's flipping of the cards increased his predicament as this policy become widely exposed and used. This is what will make the internal crisis that the Zionist entity is experiencing likely to deepen further and further, despite the move that Netanyahu is employing to intimidate Palestinian settlers and vice versa. Dear comrade, we cannot ignore the history that we have all studied, which teaches us that Britain's Balfour promised the Jews in 1917 an alleged state called Israel. It was a promise from a British colonizer who had no ownership or legitimacy to confiscate the land from its owners and give it to those who did not deserve it, except for the balance of power in the world and the rules of the war. World War II enabled this colonial power to fulfill this promise when the dominant American state established a camp in the Middle East called Israel in 1948, which grew and flourished through the failures of the Arab slave army in 1948, 67, 73, and beyond so far. History repeated itself when former U.S. President Donald Trump declared Jerusalem the capital of the Zionist entity in 2016 in an attempt to renew an old promise that lasted 100 years. But all these colonizers and aspirants know that the battle is still very long, and despite everything they have achieved in terms of colonial policies and changing the identity of the Palestinians and cities, they are likely to be destroyed, especially if they look on the action of the people in their repeated revolutions in Palestine and other countries of the region, which did not subside in defending their right to freedom and returning the right to its owners. Free people in most third world countries do not wait for the authorities in their countries to move in protests to defend human freedom, especially since they know in advance the positions of the ruling authorities, which are nothing more than something ridiculous. Words empty of meaning and colored with false slogans of truth and freedom. The truth is that the liberals are moving in their belief that the Palestinian issue is a clear colonial issue in which there are elements of resistance and defense of land, identity, and freedom, and nothing is expected from its rulers except natural and usual meaningless silence. Of course, There is nothing strange about this matter, especially since some of the authorities of our slave societies boarded the normalization train and signed peace treaties. And they gave us lessons and lessons about the relationship of slaves with their Jewish masters and the necessity of bringing peace to the world under the conquer of American monopoly and the blowing of the miserable and desperate media trumpets. Free people, although few in number in slave societies, become more ready about the cause, the more the ruling authorities in their countries declined. This is the clearest evidence of the solidarity positions here and there, and the great difference that the liberals have made on social media to expose the Zionist violation against the defenseless Palestinian people. For example, slaves on social media have been greatly disturbed by free-led pro-Palestinian campaigning to expose ongoing attacks by Israeli soldiers on civilians. Thousands of fake accounts were created on social media sites, and the companies that own these sites contributed to monitoring the free channels and closed some of them because these companies are supported and funded by the Zionist lobby and dominance power. My comrades, quite simply, our belief in freedom and democracy stops when it comes to the Palestinian human right to freedom. However, this approved unusual method against us confirm that the liberals have succeeded once again in the revealing the facts and revealing the barbaric face of the Zionist entity by relying on technology. The protests of free people in our slave societies and their chanting for Palestinian rights will remain incomplete and ineffective if it does not receive the support of the democratically elected authorities emanating from the will of their people. The first lesson we are learned from Palestine is freedom and the right to self-determination. Hence, some of the Arab rulers cannot understand the goal of the Palestinian or even just understand their demands. In addition to the connection of these rulers to external agendas that do not understand them, people care as much as they do. It is concerned with the society of the Zionist entity in the region. Only free and liberal regimes are able to act and interact positively with the demands of their people masses, while authoritarian authorities will only marginalize the demands of their people and their temporal issues. It is simple equation which requires us to understand that Palestine will not be liberated until we, as a free people, expand the space of freedom, democracy, and the rule by the people because the authorities deny the human right to freedom. That's why there is no justice in today's world. Thank you, my dear comrade.